I always believe it was out of necessity because I really, of, I had nothing. I really had nothing. But I think it just dawned on me one day that I had me, and no one could really take who I was away from me. So it was a necessity because I realized I wanted to live. I wanted life, and I wanted me. So it was necessity, and I wanted to get away from there. But and there was no one there to help me, so I had to find ways and means of doing it myself, of believing in myself, of strengthening myself, so that I was able to move on and live.
If you Google the question, how many orphans are in Africa, you'll come across a site called theborgenproject.org, and it has 10 facts about orphans in Africa. It states that out of the approximate 140 million orphans in the world, Africa sits at about 30% of that number at 52 million. And they break it down into location. In South Africa alone, there are 3.5 million orphans, and as of 2014, 812,000 of those lost both parents, and 2.13 million have lost their fathers, and 611,000 have lost their mothers. I do not know why that number is so disproportionate. Man, I wish I knew. If you guys have any idea about that study, let me know. I would love to hear some theories about why that number is so different. And if you Google violence against children, you'll come to the World Health Organization, which has some pretty good information that you guys should go check out. It is estimated that globally up to 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 years have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional violence or neglect in the past year. That is just mind-blowing. 1 year, 1 billion children have experienced that. And these questions and statistics actually play into today's guest. Her name is Maria Nhambu, and she goes by Nhambu. And she grew up in an orphanage in Tanzania in East Africa for mixed-race children. They were actually, the orphanage was actually run by German Catholic nuns. So you can imagine the discipline was pretty harsh, and she actually was able to pull herself out of that and write an amazing trilogy called the Dancing Soul Trilogy, which is 3 books that are just amazing about her life. They're memoirs about her life and her life lessons and what she had to overcome to get to where she's at. Not having any knowledge of her parents' whereabouts. She had to get over being bullied, sexually abused, chronic sickness, all of these things she had to overcome. And these things would actually shape her in her life and help guide her to success. I'm excited about today's guest. You guys have to listen to this conversation. So let's get this thing started. Let's get after it. This is Your Superior Self, episode 94, Africa's Child, with author Maria Nhambu. Please don't beat me. I won't do it again, I promise. She pinched my arms hard and shook me until I almost dropped the bread. When she let go, I set the bread on the table and started to run away from her. She grabbed my skirt with one hand and pulled my hair with the other, saying, "Next time, get my bread over here on time, you stupid pig." "I will, I promise." As I turned to walk back to my table, she reached under my skirt and grabbed a thick fold of skin on my thigh and pinched me hard. Another big girl congratulated her, saying, "You have to teach these brats some manners." And that excerpt was taken from the book titled Africa's Child, written by today's guest, Maria Nhambu, and it's actually book 1 of the Dancing Soul Trilogy. And guys, if you are late shoppers like myself, this is actually a really good gift idea to give your wife. So get out there right now and buy this trilogy for your wife. She will thank you later. I know for me personally, this book was a game changer. It definitely made me realize what I need to do as a father, what I need to do as a husband, and what I need to do as a human being. I know for me personally, I know for me personally, I wasn't expecting this book to have such of an impact on me that it did. Learning about a 5-year-old story, a mixed race African female, and what she had to endure at a German orphanage was mind blowing to me. Like the physical abuse and the mental abuse and the sexual abuse that happened there, and how she got through all of that and persevered to where she's at today is just astonishing. And I think that you guys need to listen to this story and get more involved in community service. I think that once you start realizing the numbers of people that are being affected by different types of famine, different types of poverty, different types of low water supply, clean water. I mean, you look at the numbers, especially in Africa, it's astonishing. For me, this book really resonates with the idea of having faith in the journey, right? Like everybody forgets to have faith. Everybody gets disappointed where they're at in their lives, whether they're in an orphanage or whether they're in a career. I know it's very hard to relate the two locations as far as where you're at in your journey. I mean, Nhambu was in an orphanage, and she had no support. She had no parents. She was physically abused. She was mentally abused and sexually abused. But she persevered, and she had faith that one day she'll be able to find her mom, and she'll be able to do the things that she always dreamed of. And I mean, where are you at in your life? Like, really take inventory about where you're at in your life. Like, have you lost faith about what your journey is and what your mission is, and have you let little things deter you from going out and doing what you care about? And I love reading books like this because it puts things in perspective for me. Like, it really does. I mean, there's 140 million orphans in the world, and 30% of which are in Africa. Like, what can I do to be more giving? What can I do to help someone better their lives? Whether it be interviewing somebody like Nhambu, who will inspire you guys to go out and do something with your lives that will prevent something. I don't know, but it's just so eye-opening for me, or it brings awareness to things that I never thought about before. Like, I never thought about the numbers of orphans that are in the world before having this interview. I never thought about, Africa in the sense that there's so much racism over there. We talk about, everybody thinks about racism in America, and they automatically think about, black and white. And then you go to Africa, there's so many different types of racism over there. And it's just crazy. It puts things in perspective for yourself. And I'm just blessed to be able to have this show and be able to interview people like Nhambu and connect. And this goes into last week's episode where I told you guys, start having more genuine conversations, connecting with people. I mean, imagine if she didn't write these stories. This wouldn't even be, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. She wouldn't have. I mean, she has 3 books about her life. 3 books. If you asked me to write a book, it would be, I don't know, 2 pages. Maybe not even that long. But I mean, like, she has 3 pages that are inspiring, and the stories are just so good. And go out and have a conversation with somebody and connect with somebody. It might inspire you to do something great with your life. And don't get discouraged wherever you're at in your life. It's where you're at. It's your journey. That's where you're supposed to be. And get inspired to do more. Don't let people pull you down and make you stop doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, pick yourself up and have faith that you are where you are for a reason. And, you're not what you were yesterday. You're a little bit better. And just keep going. Keep getting better. That's all we can do. And with that said, I want to wish Superior Nation a very Merry Christmas. I hope that you guys get everything that you asked for and much, much more. So, without further ado, here is my conversation with Africa's child, Maria Nhambu. What is going on, Superior Nation? Tonight, I have a very special guest. She is the author of the trilogy of book number 1, Africa's Child. Book number 2 is what is it? America's Baby?
America's Daughter.
Daughter. And then the last one being Drum Beats and Heartbeats. Nhambu, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you.
So why don't you go ahead and give everybody like a quick rundown? What are you up to today?
Okay, I'm right here talking with you. I stay in Minnesota for the summer. I'm down, in Florida now for the whole winter. Do you want me to give them kind of like an update of a little summary of my story?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the premise of my whole story is that I felt like someone had to write my book, and I felt like I was chosen to write my book because I had a very kind of traumatic childhood. uh, I'm of mixed race. And at that time, I'm 76 years old now. So 76 years ago in Tanzania, the country that I am from, mixed race children were not very well accepted. The white fathers, for the most part, fathered us, who didn't even acknowledge us, and the African mothers were ashamed of us. So very often, if they grew up well, they were hidden in the African villages, and and some of us might live and die without even seeing the sun or the wind or get out to nature. I was so very lucky I was not one of them because an order of nuns, Catholic nuns from Germany, they're called the Precious Blood Sisters, felt sorry for us. And so they opened up a home or an orphanage for mixed race children. So word got out all over the country that now there was a place for, mixed race children. So they came to this place. It was high, high up in the mountains, the Usambara Mountains of northeastern Tanzania. And went out, so people came just in every age and size and shape, boys and girls. Some were 25, some were 15, some were 6, some were 7. I was brought there when I was 3 days old. So the bigger girls who were there took care of the little girls. And as far as I can remember, I was always the little girl, meaning they took care of our grooming and all of our other needs. The only unfortunate thing is that for the most part, a lot of the abuse that happened in the orphanage was done by the big girls. I think they were frustrated by in their life. I've tried to understand it all, but we were really abused in every sense, physically, psychologically, mentally, sexually. It was just a very tough life, but at the same time we were very grateful that there was a place, there was a home where we were wanted, and the nuns did their very best. Most of the nuns were really good, but there were a few who were extremely cruel, and I write about all of that. We were beaten almost around the clock, and it was a tough life, but it for us it was a place where we were wanted and we were cared for. They educated us, and we went only up to the fourth grade at this school. And some of the children who were brought there, some of the people who came there, they were not all orphans, because people found out that there was finally a place in the country that accepted mixed race children, and we were wanted there. It was our home. So there were other mixed race couples or biracial couples who were legally married and happy and had children. They brought their children there too, because they too were discriminated by the larger society. So at the orphanage, there were so many inequities because there were always the haves and the have-nots. The ones who had parents went away for holidays, they had gifts, they were just very lucky. And then there were those of us who were true orphans who stayed there all the time. So this is kind of in a nutshell what my in book one, but it starts like that. But then I was lucky enough to when I was very young, I realized very early, and I always think this is what saved me, that I was alone in this world. And I remember thinking I might have been 3 or 4. In the book I say 5 because I think people won't believe me. I really remember thinking that it wouldn't matter to anybody whether I lived or I died because I had no one. And but then as I was feeling bad and all, it just occurred to me that it really mattered to me. So I really wanted to live. And I made a decision at a very, very young age as a child to just love myself and to take care of myself. And that really, for me was a turning point because I still have that value about who I am and loving myself no matter what. So and then I was kind of a lonely child. So I also developed, I was called Fat Mary. I had only one name, which was just Mary. I didn't have a last name. And for some reason, I was fat. I was not really fat. I was chunky, but most of the orphans were really, really skinny. So I looked fat. And I hated the name Fat Mary. So every time they called me Fat Mary, I would cry.
Mm.
So that day when I really decided I wanted myself and I wanted to live, I decided to take that name Fat Mary and make her my friend. She was not an imaginary friend. She was just like my twin. She was someone I talked to. She was my counselor. She was my consoler. I analyzed my life with her. She very often gave me very good ideas of how to handle life and situations. So I had Fat Mary, who was me, who was the part of me that you do not really see, and I realize everybody has that. Everybody has their Fat Mary. They might call them something else, but when you look at a person, you see their eyes, their hair, the color of their skin, or you see their clothes, but you really do not know them. You do not know their inner self. You do not know their Fat Mary. So I developed this person whom I call Fat Mary, and she became really me and a part of me and my constant companion. The next thing I felt I really needed was an education because I had a real desire to get out of the orphanage. I had no idea anything about the rest of the world or what there was, what there wasn't, but somehow I knew I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of the orphanage. So I put lots of emphasis on education, but we were educated only up to the fourth grade uh, earlier, and then later on, the nuns found some money to send us away from the orphanage, like 200 miles away, to an all African school. And I wasn't chosen the first time, and I did something which is very, I couldn't believe I did, but that is in the book, and because I was so upset. But the second time, when I was like 13, I was chosen to go to a school very far away. It was an all African girls' school, also run by the German Precious Blood Sisters. And it was literally like jumping from the frying pan into the fire as far as how we were treated. We were called the mixed race people. We were called every name in the book. It was very, very tough. But I survived, and then after that, I was chosen to go to a secondary school, the first secondary school for girls in the country, and it was run by American Maryknoll sisters from New York, and it was like night and day from the German Catholic sisters to these American Catholic sisters, and I describe all of that in the book, how I couldn't believe it was the same religion, how they made me feel like religion could be something good.
Hmm.
So in this school, I met a woman, and she was volunteering. She taught there for just 1 year, and she was my English teacher. And of course, she heard about me that after school, I know they're all boarding schools. I had to go back to the orphanage because that was my home. I don't know how she learned, but long story short, she ended up adopting me and bringing me to America. She was only 23 and I was 19 years old, but she managed to adopt me, and she was an only child. And her mother had passed away, but she moved mountains and she saw a need, and she brought me to America where I got scholarships and went to school in St. Paul, Minnesota.
So what book is
Uh,
that in? Is that in the
that
first
is
book?
in book two. That is no. That's still in the first book. That's when she adopted me, and then book two, America's Daughter, begins with her and I arriving in New York.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there because I want to read the rest of this trilogy, and
Okay.
I love the first book, and I want to unpack a little bit of that, and but I still want to be surprised by the second book because it's so detailed. It's so intriguing to hear your story. It's so transparent with some of the experiences that you had. Right? I mean,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
unbelievable. So I have never been to Africa. I've never experienced a German orphanage. I've never, traveled basically outside of basically the East Coast of the United States. But um, your book definitely takes you there, and it's crazy. It's like, all right. So the one thing that stood out to me was
Hmm.
definitely you developing this Fat Mary, this twin,
Hmm.
and this developing of this inner voice, this inner being, right? Was that out of necessity? Was that out of the abuse? Was it, or was it like your way of dealing with where you were at?
I always believe it was out of necessity because I really of I had nothing. I really had nothing, but I think it just dawned on me one day that I had me, and no one could really take who I was away from me. So it was a necessity because I realized I wanted to live. I wanted life, and I wanted me. So it was necessity, and I wanted to get away from there, but and there was no one there to help me. So I had to find ways and means of doing it myself, of believing in myself, of strengthening myself, so that I was able to move on and live.
Mm, that's awesome. Was there like a particular specific um, time that it happened? Do you remember? Was there something that happened to you that created this, or do you remember exactly when this Fat Mary occurred?
Yes, I remember, and I describe it. I think in the book. I think in book one too. There's a chapter very early on. It's called Village Mothers, and I always was I liked dancing at night. When we slept, the orphanage was surrounded by African villages, and they had all their dances, their tribal dances, their ritualistic dances, and we would hear the drums. I would sit in my bed and just tremble. I mean, I would feel the beat, and I just had to dance. And you'll see later on, dance becomes a very big part of my life. I developed a complete dance program, but it started right there, and I would sneak out and into the village and go and try to dance with the Africans because we were forbidden to dance that way. So, but I danced with them. But one day I went down there, and there were three very old women, and this is when I decided that I was obsessed. As in chapter one, I was obsessed absolutely as far as I can remember on finding my mother and trying to figure out why she didn't want me. And I knew everybody had a mother. So as a child, 3, 4, 5 years old, I decided my mother had to be African and living in the village there and down there. So I went to the village, and there were three women who were cooking around an earthenware pot, and the flames were up there, and they were very nice and smiling. So I decided one of them had to be my mother. And so I asked each one of them. They were really old, they had white hair, but I had no clue. So I asked them, "Are you my mother?" And there was silence. I went to the second one. "Are you my mother?" And there was complete silence. And I was sure the third one had to be my mother. I was just sure. But there was, when I said, "Are you my mother?" there was again complete silence. But then all three of them in unison said, "We are all your mother."
Wow.
That was a turning point in my life. That was something that happened at that time, that I realized I was not alone. I felt, I mean, I was connected. I belonged. I felt like I belonged to the village. I felt the feminine spirit. I felt the human spirit. I felt everything over there, like I was part of this whole universe and everything that was all around us. I remember it so very, very clearly, and I have never forgotten that. Then so, and whenever I speak to a group of people, no matter what, that feeling comes back, our human connectedness. And those women really gave me that gift of letting me know that I was part of something, even though I had no parents, I hadn't anything. So that's when I decided I am special, I am connected. I just don't have, a mother. And I was always asking many questions. So I was always talking to myself. So that's when I decided I have me. I can talk to myself. I love myself. So I created Fat Mary, who was always me, who knew me more than I even knew myself. And it came from that essence of what I felt that evening when those African village old grandmothers said to me, "We are all your mother."
Mm, that's powerful. Do you still talk to? I feel so bad saying it too. It's like I feel so bad saying Fat Mary. Like,
You know,
I'm like,
yes,
do you
I
feel
still
bad talking
talk
to
to,
Fat Mary? I'm like, oh
I,
my
I,
god, I feel so
I,
bad.
no, I still talk about Fat Mary, but you know, when you finish reading the books, you will love Fat Mary.
Mm,
Whatever connotation it comes with that, you know, with the term in the West or whatever, it kind of disappears because you really see her for who she is. And fat is just, it just isn't there. It disappears because she is so present in so many ways. And at first it hits you. You don't like to call anybody Fat Mary, but that is exactly how I was. I really detested that name. But I took that name and made it my friend. And then I was not afraid anymore. And I didn't cry anymore when they called me. I felt comfort, you know. So you will see as you read the story, the whole feeling you get when you hear Fat Mary kind of goes away and it takes you into the real meaning of who your other self really is.
mm.
I just happened to call it Fat Mary because I was being called that all the time. So I decided to make it a beautiful Fat Mary so that I didn't cry every time they call. I felt good actually in a way. I felt I had she was my friend.
So you basically took the power away from them
Absolutely.
and
And
gave
I
it to
didn't know
yourself.
that's what I was doing, you know, but as I look back, that's exactly what I did.
Mm. And I mean, some of the abuse that you suffered from at the orphanage was, I mean, serious stuff. I mean, you talk about the fighting, the older girls making the younger girls fight each other, and the beatings. And I mean, how do you get through that?
You know, I don't know. You know, it was. You know, I was always scared. I was always crying way ahead of time before when we were supposed to fight. You know, the first one who cried lost. Oh, I started crying way before it was my turn to to fight, and I just didn't have it within me to beat anybody or no to fight. And I think that how I got through all of that. It's sad to say, but I looked at it. It kind of became routine. You kind of knew if you did this, you'd get beaten, and then you'll get over it, and then you'll go. Then you'll come back and you'll do this, and you'll get beaten. So you learn. You learn to either avoid those things or to kind of expect it. And you know you people the orphans over there. We didn't ever sit and discuss what we were going through. I had my Fat Mary, and I think I was one of the few people who really talked about their feelings, but I didn't talk to anybody else. When I talked to other people, I remember once I asked one of the other orphans over there when the nun was talking about us, and there always were European or white visitors who came to the orphanage, you know, for a visit, and we had to sing for them, and they gave the nun some money for our care or some clothing, or they donated something for us. You know, the nun would tell them and talk about all of us poor children, and she would call us unwanted children, children of sin. And I remember asking one of the orphans over there, aren't you, what do you think? Aren't you upset that they're calling you children of sin? Do you think you're a child of sin? She just laughed at me, and everybody just laughed at me and called me stupid. Who cares what they call us? You know, oh my God, you are so stupid. That's what I heard my whole life. I was stupid. So I learned that's why Fat Mary was so important to me. I could talk to her, and she
Mm.
told me I was not a child of sin. And but we never discussed our inner feelings. Even later on, I've met quite a few people as we've gotten older, you know, and I'm listening to them talk, and I'm finding out their stories for the first time. It's like we were not at the same time at the same place because everybody experienced it however they could at their own level with we never talked about our feelings inside. I really think even until today I'm one of the first ones to really, you know, talk about that and to write about it.
Well, you're the one that kind of brought it to the nuns' attention, right? Like that the older girls were treating you
Yes.
unfairly and beating you and making you do their chores and doing their laundry. I mean, just doing a ton of you know
Yeah,
crazy things. I mean, you're the one that brought it to their attention. Like
exactly.
I mean, did it stop after you basically took?
Well, it stopped a little bit because now we knew that when we were beaten, we could run to the nun who took care of us was Sister Silvestris. We could run to her and we could say, so and so is beating me, like Zami is beating me, and then they would kind of stop. But it never really stopped. It continued because the nuns were gone. There's only one nun who was up in the children's quarter taking care of us. All the nuns had a convent and they were mostly down there. We saw them for church, and we saw them when we were doing the chores with them, but there was the one nun taking care of us, and she could not be in all places at all times. So it got a little bit better because we could run away and we could go, we would say we're going to tell her, but it never really stopped.
That's crazy. Like that, is that the girl that was in charge of you? What's her name?
Her name was Zami. I of course have
Zami.
changed everybody's name because she's still alive.
Sure.
I
Have you
Yeah.
seen her since?
Yes, but that's all in book two and three, and book three especially.
Ah.
You told me not to tell you about all of that, but I
Ah.
have seen her twice. I made a special visit, to go and visit her when I got married. I took my husband, and I went to visit her. And then I just recently went in 2011. I took a group of my friends to Africa on a safari, and I described the safari. If you haven't been to Africa, you will enjoy the book because I go into detail about Africa, a safari in
Mm.
Africa from an African's point of view rather than from a tourist point of
Oh,
view.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so we did go to visit her. So she is alive.
Well, I hope she sees all your success and definitely respects you a lot more than what she did at that young age.
Well, she might have, but she didn't. She didn't let on at all.
Oh
She
no.
didn't. Yeah. I don't think she's changed much.
But the only thing that I know about Africa, so I read um, Trevor Noah's book. I don't know if you
Hmm.
know who he is or not, but
Yes. Oh, exactly. I know him, and he wrote Born a Crime. I read.
mm,
I'm actually reading it. I haven't finished it. I always read two, three books at the same time.
what do you think about it so far?
What do I think about it so far?
Yeah.
The one thing that people, they, because he was also mixed race, and people always kind of confuse. I mean, just the overall view. A lot of the things that happened to him, I was very familiar with because I really did get to learn apartheid and how it functioned. So he was writing in real time what we learned in theory because we were not from South Africa. But one of the things that I found that the very big difference is the fact that he had a home, he had a mother.
Hmm.
And right then and there, our experience is like night and day, except, for the discrimination, the racial discrimination, and the real tough life. That life is tough, especially those days for all Africans, not only mixed race, but we had an extra burden to carry. So I felt that he described it very, very well. But very often I would just find myself saying, my God, that was so much better than me. If only I had
Hmm.
that, I would do this and that. But everything is relevant. And the major difference again is that he was so wanted, and he was guided, and he had a family. And I was kind of lost someplace wondering why my parents didn't want me. But you will learn all about, in book two and three. It will blow your mind how it all comes together. So I won't
Yes.
tell you, but it
Yes.
really
I
does come
cannot
together.
wait. You don't even understand how much. Like I've been so into your first book. It's like the chapters are really short and sweet. They're very specific to
Hmm.
what is going on. Like how do you remember that? Like how do you like I can barely remember when I was like 21 and you're remembering things that when you were 5.
Yeah, I'm asked that question all the time. And, I never knew how to answer it, but I finally came up with, what? How can I forget?
Mm.
You really cannot forget some of those things because remember at that time I already had my Fat Mary and I was already processing stuff. I was analyzing things. So it's not like they happened, I forgot. I took them and I don't know if you remember, I asked Fat Mary to hold for me all of the emotions, everything that I could not understand, and to give them back to me when I grew up and I could deal with them better. I kind of, we had a division of labor. She hung on to everything that I couldn't take care of because I had to go and wash Zami's clothes. I had to go and do this. But we had all of these conversations. So because, they say when you talk about something, when you put something down on paper, when you write something, you remember it more. I think I remember all those details because I went over them many, many times in as a child, and they have become a part of me.
Mm. You know, I heard something today. It was on a podcast. I think it was on Joe Rogan or something like that, where people, and like in your situation where you're tortured or your reality is sometimes very bad, that you create like an alter ego or
Hmm.
a, a personality inside, so that way it gives you that release from reality. Do you feel like
Yeah.
that's? Do you think that's a little bit of it?
Yeah, there's a little bit of it. I think people might call it different things. I don't really quite know how to explain it. It was not an alter ego. It was not, as I said, an imaginary friend. The best way I can explain it was everything that made me that you do not see unless I tell you.
Mm. Like your inner being, almost like
My inner being. Yeah,
your
it's
inner
exactly
being, your
my
truest
inner
self.
being. Yes, my authentic self, which sometimes, people can have glimpses of other
Mm.
people, but for the most part, you don't. We just see kind of the shell of the person. So, me is everything that's underneath that shell. It is my spirit. It is what makes me human. It's my divinity.
Mm. It's like that voice, that quiet voice that the
Yeah.
rest of us hear that we
Yes.
ignore, and then but you embraced it and you gave it a name.
Yeah. And it's because as we said, I really had no choice because I wanted to live. I wanted to survive. And I created, this world where I could live, where I was appreciated, where I was happy.
Mm. How has your experience without a mother, like how has it shaped you as a mother?
You know, again, it's just like, I hope I have been a good mother. I have two kids. Uh, I think it was again. I seem to instinctively know what I needed. I knew what my children needed from me, even though I never had it. I did not have it, so I knew what it was I did not have, and I strived to give it to them the best I could.
Mm. It's hard, right? Like
Hmm.
you don't have this idea what a mother is, right? Like you have these nuns. I think there was one nun who took care of you up until the age of 4, and then
Yes,
that's when you were given over to the older girls. But
all
it's
the
like,
girls, yeah.
but then after that, it's kind of like, all right, so what do I do now? And I mean, how where did you draw your in like your inspiration for? I mean, it's the need that you didn't have, right? Or it's the
It's the
needs.
absence of what I had. It's just like sometimes you always know the opposite. Like if you
Mm,
if you if you love, you also kind of in a small way you all know the opposite of love, which might be hate. If you are angry, you might also know what it is to be peaceful. Like in the absence of something, as a human being, you need something. There's a yearning, and you cannot might not put it into words, but if you see somebody else who has this need or who is helpless, and you see yourself helpless over there, you know instinctively what they need. So I hope I gave the children the love and the care and the presence that I felt was absent in my childhood.
yeah. Did you give them? I think it was your first gift from your friend's mother was a baby doll, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, that was so precious, and this story with the friend's mother with the baby doll gets really exciting. I don't want to tell you because you told me not to, but anyway,
But
I'll
it
just
just
tell.
makes you it makes all right, so to be honest with you, like be totally transparent and vulnerable here, it like makes me feel bad about the things that I've taken for granted, right? Like for I was telling somebody today, I wish that I would in reality in real time realize the blessings that I had growing up and that I didn't complain about things. I wish that I didn't want things. I wish that I had just been humble with the things or
Hmm.
be happy with the things that I had growing up, right? Because you don't
Yes.
know what you don't know, and then you read books like your book and your series of books, and it's like this lady. I mean, she was given up at birth, raised in this place where abuse was frequent, and you were getting sick. You had to. I mean, you were talking about these methods that the nuns used to clear your stomach of
Yeah.
viruses and worms and all kinds of bacteria, and it's like, man, oh, I mean, I think I had chicken pox, and that was the worst time that's the worst time that I was ever sick growing up. And it's like, you had to drink like, what was it? Castor oil.
Castor
Yeah.
oil
Like,
to
I
get
mean,
rid of our
I
worms.
wasn't getting beat. I wasn't getting, abused. I was a kid in America growing up. And I read your book and it just makes me think, it's like, gosh, man, like, and it's the same thing with Trevor Noah. And it's the same thing.
Hmm.
I highly suggest that you read Chris Wilson's book. He's the author of The Master Plan.
Oh.
He's from Baltimore,
Hmm.
and his story is very motivational. And it's the same thing. And it's like, when my kids are old enough where they can sit down and read this stuff, I'm gonna stuff it down their throats, because it's like, look, you have it good. I think, me personally, I think even the homeless in the United States have it better than most of the people in the world.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that has come out I've written my book simply because I wrote my books for my children because I wanted them to know me the way I never knew me. And I figure I have nothing much to give them but me. I want them to know me, who I am. There's nothing left out, so they cannot guess. They know my essence. They know who I am. But there have been so many outcomes of people who have written to me after they've read the book. And one of the books, and one of the things that comes out all the time is exactly what you said. People stop and start appreciating what they have, who they are. They look at themselves differently. They look at their country. They look at their family. They look at every single thing they have. All of a sudden, gratitude becomes a part of their everyday life. And that is not why I wrote the book. But I wrote the book simply to share my story. But to me, when that is happening and people start truly appreciating and changing how they take things for granted, how they take family for granted, how they do all of this, I feel so good that I've done a part that no matter what I've gone through, there's so many areas that I'm reaching people and helping people and transforming people and opening their eyes for them to become better people.
Mm. If you think about all the people that written you and have talked to you about this book, and you close your eyes and you think about one word that represents that feeling, what would it be?
Um, One word is hard. I would just say humanity.
Oh, that is, I mean, their story is the essence of humanity. I mean, it has everything in it.
Hmm.
Every part of humanity is in this trilogy. What made you write these books? I mean, other than that you wanted to get your story out, was there like
I
someone pushing you?
No, it was, oh, I fought it with everything I had. I kept feeling like someone should tell the story of, there are things that came together. I felt that there were so many of us who lived and died, and it would be like their lives were in vain. Nobody knows about us. Nobody knows what life we had. And I think every human being is important. Every human being has a meaning, and I just didn't want us to just have lived and died. So I thought I would at least tell our story so that some people will know that we were there, that these were people, human beings, like all of us over here. So, but I felt so inadequate. I was so insecure. I was really worried that, saying, English is not my language. I just, what am I thinking I should write a book? It took me 25 years to write the book and because I was not necessarily discouraged. I felt a feeling that I needed to put it into words and I needed to, but I felt sorry for the people who were going to read it because I felt it would sound like a second grader because of the language and the cultural problems. But I still took my time and I put it away for a time, but it kept calling me. The book kept calling me. It was just like, this is one thing you can do for other people in your life. You're part of humanity. We all have to, we're all in this thing together. We all have stories. And the more we share our stories, the more we share with that humanity and we improve and make people's life maybe easier or happier or better. I was just compelled to do it. And I had no choice. The story needed to be written and it picked me and I couldn't run away.
Mm, wow. I mean, even if you did try to run away, it's gonna keep calling you, right?
And that's what happened. I tried many times.
What have you been back to the orphanage?
Yes, several times.
And what is
In
it
fact,
like?
I was right there this January. Right now, it's not an orphanage. It's a very prestigious secondary school.
Mm,
And I gave a talk there this January. I took Kathy, my American mother, the woman
hmm
who adopted me. I took her back there. She turned 80, so I took her back to the orphanage, and I took her back to Africa. And we and I gave a talk about my life to this orphan, to this secondary school now, and people there. I gave a talk to over 600 secondary school children, and they had never heard anything about the history of the place.
what?
No, they did not know. It's an African school now. The orphanage stopped
Mm,
existing in like 74. So now it's a prestigious secondary school and it's a boarding school. So kids come from all over. So when I wanted to talk to them, I said, do you know your history? I assumed they kind of did, but they did not. They sat there mesmerized. I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe. I was almost in awe. I was just kind of spooked out because they were glaring at me like I was telling them some tale from
hmm
someplace.
was
Yeah.
the first memory that came back to you?
The first memory when I went back there,
Yeah.
or oh, it just the first memory is how we used to look when we were coming down, to the orphanage. Like this time, I call it the orphanage, but now it's the school. I think in the book I described the road when we came out of the clearing from the car, and I saw the orphanage down there. It's still in the same location and everything. I remembered walking down that road and always staying and looking at the road and wondering when my mother would come for me from that road. I would sit and stare at that same road we were on. And so, of course, the first memory that comes was just me wishing and imagining and creating this mother who was going to come and get me. So all of the things I remembered were again were just unique, very unique to me. And if I
hmm
told, I'm sure other orphans had their own stories and they would, but we never discussed them. This summer, I managed to get together with three of them, and each one of us told our stories, and I was shocked because I didn't know half of what they were going through and what they were thinking. And when I was brought there when I was 3 days old, this one other orphan says to me that her father, who was a Greek, a white Greek, raised her until she was 7. And then when this school opened up for mixed race, he brought her over there and left her there and never came back.
Wow.
That
That's
was her story. And I've known her whole life until I left the orphanage, but I've never known that.
it. Just wasn't talked about.
No, no, not necessarily age. And then most of us, like especially me, I didn't know my age.
Mm. It's kind of weird because you talk about that memory and you talk about
Yes,
you
no,
imagine.
yes, I tell you that I was about 3 or 4 because I've checked with people who were older who were there who told me. But also, if you remember, in the very first chapter, my friend Elizabeth,
hmm
she turned 5, and then since I didn't know my age, we decided I was 5 years old also. So we were 5 or we were 6. So I became 6 because she became 6, and I stuck to that. And so that was my age.
It's
And
awesome.
as it turned out, years later, I was right. I was exactly 6 years old,
That
but I
is
didn't I
nuts.
didn't find that out until I was 36. I didn't find out again. I don't want to tell you the story, but I didn't find out that I was exactly that age. But we were playing. If you go in the chapter, you will read it
hmm
again. She was going home for holidays. I think we were turning 6. But the reason I remember this thing going in the village is that I was 3. It was long before I decided I was 6 years old that all those other things had happened where I created my Fat Mary and all of these other things. But it turned out that I ended up being 6 when I found out for sure when I was born and everything. I was just like, oh my God,
That's crazy, right?
it is. And as you read the book, there's so many crazy things happen that you just want to put it down. It's almost spooky.
Yeah, I know. We talked a little bit before going on online, and I been reading it nonstop. I wish I had picked it up earlier, but it's just like, things happen, things get busy, life gets crazy.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is three books that are. I mean, I'm on chapter 25, and it's halfway through the book. I mean, there's many, many, many more, and these stories are detailed. There's 60 chapters, I think.
Yeah.
They're detailed. They're very transparent. You're very vulnerable in this book. It's fascinating. But I wanted to go back to your memory though. It's very beautiful to me though. You might not think. I'm sure you think this, but so you come back to school after so many years, and the first memory you have is going down that road, waiting for your mother to come get you. And then the entire time I'm thinking is like, now that you're going back, you have that your adopted mother. You're bringing your adopted mother back to your place of where you lived.
Hmm.
So it's like
Yeah.
this. It's like full circle. It's like you were
It
there.
really is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because I was bringing her back. She was who I was looking for. And people say to me, she's only 4 years older than you. How can you have a mother-daughter relationship? She's kind of like a sister. But I had no trouble considering her as my mother because she gave me everything a mother gives a child, everything I needed. She was the mother I needed. And I never called her mom, but she had all the virtue, all the motherhoodness, everything that I really wanted. She represented that. And we have this beautiful relationship, and I always consider her as my mother. The story has a twist in book two and all, you know because my birth mother shows up.
Oh
And I
my
know I should
goodness.
I
There
shouldn't
you
have said
go.
that.
Oh my goodness.
Now it will make you want to read it.
Ah, yes.
But my real mother is Kathy, the one who brought me, who took me
Hmm.
from Africa. And we're still very, very, very close.
What was
But
that
the
feeling
story
like
is
when you
just
brought
amazing.
when you brought
I'm
Kathy
sorry.
when you brought Kathy there? What was like what were you feeling?
Oh, it was, I think it was mostly her, she was, I felt very, very happy that she took me from there and she came back and so she could literally see the miracle that she created. I always tell people I was so glad when she decided to take me to America. I was 19, she was 23. I was very glad that she didn't think it through because, because I was like a basket case child, and then and she was hardly out of adolescence. I thank God she just did it. Um, because
Looking
but
back,
yet at the same time, I feel that, and I try to understand it. I try to understand it. I think I felt better because I couldn't put my arms around it. So I felt, she saw me, but she really didn't see me with her eyes. She saw me with her heart,
mm,
and her heart spoke. When you function from the emotional point of view, emotions have no filters. They just kind of come out, and I've written my book from the emotional point of view because I always say people know around the world that humanity we share. We all know what it is to be angry, to be abused, to be scared, to be in love, to be abandoned. It doesn't matter if you're from Alaska or you are an Aborigine or you're from Norway or you're from Italy or anywhere. Those emotions we share. So I felt, even though my experience was so very different, if I wrote from and really laid myself bare and just make myself vulnerable, I really felt that is the way I had to write my book if I wanted to talk to people who would understand what I'm trying to say. So I write from the emotional point of view, and invariably, people's circumstances are different. But of course, they understand all of those things and they really relate to the story. They come up with their own stories. So, I don't know. You
well, I mean, you have three books. They're great. Like, but what is like the main message? Like, what are you? If you could speak to somebody right now with your heart, like, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, yeah, which is what I did, is to really love themselves unconditionally. And it's not like people sometimes think if you say that you're being selfish, it's like night and day from being selfish. People have to look at themselves, to value themselves, to respect themselves, to love themselves, because love begins with you. Like even when I go back to my Catholicism or to the Bible or to what Jesus said, love your neighbor as thyself. He didn't say love your neighbor as you love me. I tell people to love themselves. Very often we have the solutions of our life and our problems within ourselves. As impossible as my situation was, I looked within and I loved who I was. And that helped me. I mean, you really can't lose if you love yourself and you believe in yourself, and then you just go out there and do what you can. So just tell people, look for solutions within you. Don't always think everybody else can solve your problems. You can probably solve your problems best of all, but you have to begin at a point where you're a good human being, and you love yourself, and you respect yourself, and you treasure yourself, and you carry yourself that way.
I think it's tough because people can't forgive themselves.
Yeah.
They can't see past some of the things that they've done, and it's hard to get past that. And they then in return they can't love themselves, so then they can't love others.
Yeah.
And I think the more that I'm 36 now, so I'm learning my journey. For the longest time, I'm like, I cannot believe all this resistance that I'm experiencing. Trying to achieve certain goals, and it's like
Hmm.
life isn't happening like against me, right? Life is happening for me. It's like putting me in little tests, and it's
Hmm.
challenging me to live my best life. And in order to do that, in order to get to where I want to go, I'm gonna have to change. I'm gonna have to evolve. I'm gonna have to better myself, and that starts from within. So all of the things that
Hmm.
I'm ashamed of, all the things that I've done that I am guilty of doing, like I have to, one, forgive myself, and then two,
Hmm.
love myself, and then three, put in the work.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. I've never had trouble forgiving myself. Maybe I was so pathetic. I didn't have all that much, but I did. I did some naughty things, as a child. And as I'm growing older, I have lots of things, but I don't know why. As soon as I realize I've done something wrong, I just forgive myself and I try to forget it as much as I can. It resurfaces every so often. I'll say, oh, well, but I also did something good.
Mm.
So I haven't had that issue. I just have always been able to leave my past behind in that way, and also I think if I couldn't do that, I don't think I would be open to the universe as it presents itself to me. I almost had to. So much was being done for me. So much was being offered to me here in America by so many people. If I felt if I couldn't forgive myself, if I held a grudge against some of the things I had, I don't think I could be that open. So I'm very glad that I learned to just, I just didn't even think I needed forgiving. I just figured, okay, I made a mistake. Next time I'm going to do
Mm.
better.
Well, you said the universe, how it presents itself. Like, what do you mean by that?
I mean, there's so much out there that if you're open to it, you can benefit from it. I could come to America and then just be very shy and just not participate in my life, not reach out, not learn about other things. And just because I believe there is a power, there's something around that makes all of us human. It is that same energy I felt when I was talking to the women in the village. There's something that kind of connects us. And sometimes, I live by the ocean here in Florida. I walk along the ocean, and I can tell you, I feel the pull of the universe. I feel sometimes like I'm a grain of sand and I'm part of the whole thing. And when you look
Mm.
at our Earth, in the planets, we're a tiny little ball over there, and we are one. I feel that connectedness, and I have to be open to whatever is going to come from me that is there, whether I take it or not.
Mm. I love that. Everything is connected. That you have to take the opportunities that are presented, and
Hmm.
you have to kind of, like my mom says all the time, like you have to feel the fear and do it anyway, right?
Isn't it the truth? Yeah.
I mean, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. I feel like I believe the same thing that you do, right? Like that everything is connected, that things happen for a reason, that you
Hmm.
grow, and that we're here for the experience,
Yeah.
and that we're not alone. That I feel like there's a higher power in God, and I think that He is, you know, He is making sure that we grow the way that we're supposed to.
Absolutely. I believe in that too. We were taught, Catholicism, the dogma and all. I never, even as a child, I never quite got it, or I never, and I was beaten very often for asking quite few questions, about religion and all. But there is this power. This is different people call it different thing. I call it God. I absolutely believe in that, and and I feel that God exists within me and exists within everybody else. And if nothing else, that is our strong pull towards each other.
Hmm. I love it. I love it so much. How can people connect with you? How can people find more information about you?
I have a website which is very, very intensive and will show you all different aspects of my work and my life, what I've done so far. It's my name, marianambu.com. And
Amazing.
I have a blog, and and they can also get my books and see all sorts of things. You'll see I also developed a whole dance program, but that will come in book two.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna read all the books, and then I'll have you back on the show later on when I finish the trilogy.
Oh, I'd love it. Thank
Is there
you.
a fourth book in the makes?
People are asking me, I don't know, but I'm thinking, I've been struggling since my last book came out last year. I've been really thinking to write a book based on Fat Mary for children, because I
Mm.
was a child when I developed her, and she was so meaningful to me, and she's still with me, and we still have our childhoods with us. No matter, we might think we are grown, but how we look at things, they all start when we are children. And if we keep some of that, childlike wonder and innocence and excitement and belief. So I'm thinking, if there's a fourth book, it will be for children.
Absolutely, that's a great idea because like now you can teach like self empowerment to little girls that may need it, and
Yeah.
you can donate it to some of the orphanages in Africa or in America. You can, I mean, you could do so much with that. I mean, you could even
Mm.
start like a podcast of your own, like Little Fat Mary, like it's like series, and like have actors. I mean, you should definitely. I mean, seriously, you should
Well, but
definitely.
you're forgetting I'm getting older. I'm not as young as you, and I've kind of been there and struggled. And now I'm looking for time to just, not work quite as hard. I don't think I will ever not work, but something like that to me it's an ideal. It's something I probably will continue doing, because right now what I'm doing, I'm going around all over the states and all over the world, actually, just talking about my life story. People who've read my books or haven't read my books, and I'm liking it, but age happens, and I
Mm.
can feel it a whole lot more at 76 than I did when when I was 50.
Well, what would you say to you know your younger self who's in the orphanage, who is doubting herself before she finds Fat Mary? Like, what would you say to her right now?
Hmm. Wow. I would just say, I don't know if I would even say anything. I would just hug her. I would just say, what I always say is that you're okay. You are okay. You will be okay. Everything will be okay. Just believe in yourself, and love yourself. That has always been my message. Just doesn't matter what, and don't compare yourself with anyone. You're a unique human being. Nobody in the world is like you. You have to just love yourself and just develop you and trust yourself.
That's absolutely beautiful. What do you like? What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, I've never even thought of that. I don't. I always think a legacy happens in spite of you.
Mm,
I mean, whatever you do, that becomes your
yeah,
legacy.
sure.
I don't know if you set out to do a legacy. If there is going to be one, I would just like people to say that I was really involved. I just love human beings. I felt so much connected, that if I leave anything, have everybody love and care for each other because we are connected. We are one. And when all is said and done, we really are one and we are part of a big picture.
I love it. Nhambu, I want to say thank you so much for joining the show. It's been a really, really great experience and an honor to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to say thank you to Miss Maria Nhambu for hanging out with us today and having a powerful conversation. Baby Kara says, thank you guys so much for downloading this episode. Please leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcast from. If this is your first episode, please hit subscribe. And yeah, you can message me with your thoughts on the episode and your thoughts on the podcast overall. So it's been great, guys. I hope you guys have a great Christmas. Kara says Merry Christmas, and I hope that you guys get everything that you've asked for. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. You can check me out on social media, Facebook at Trey Downs, Instagram TDowns80, and on Twitter at DownsTrey. Leave me a message. Let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know what you guys got for Christmas, the big presents. I'm excited to hear. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.